Wii U.
Now, the most underrated console this generation, the Nintendo Wii.
Swing and a miss. 98-mile-per-hour fastball.
Some of us truly enjoyed over the past few years.
I love my Wii U for many reasons.
Game over. Game over.
The Wii U was great. I'm going to get this controversial statement out of the way up front. The Wii U was actually good for Nintendo as both a game maker and a console maker. There's this terrible misconception that the Wii U was a total waste, that it was a disaster from start to finish, and that just isn't reality. Look, it doesn't take an economic analyst to see that the Wii U did Nintendo no favors financially, and the system itself gets a terrible rap within the mainline gaming community because of that. But I want to make something abundantly clear. The Wii U was an incredibly forward-thinking idea from Nintendo, regardless of how it was executed, and today, I'm going to support that statement, but more importantly, I want to talk about why Nintendo fans and the gaming community as a whole should be grateful for the Wii U, both in its failures and successes, and why the Wii U's failure was one of the best things that could possibly happen to the company. Today, let's give the Wii U a final farewell by giving the system its due.
Now, those of you that frequent this channel know that I am no Wii U or Nintendo apologist. I have taken the company to task for that generation on a multitude of occasions, but there's something to be said for giving credit to something that's great, even in the midst of its errors. So today we're going to take a look at, yes, why the Wii U failed, but more importantly, what the Wii U got right, what the Wii U did well, and even more importantly, what the Wii U has provided for both the future of the industry and Nintendo as a whole, and how Nintendo has learned from the Wii U in its stance on how it treats the Switch and the future of the company. So to get started, let's take a look at some hard numbers.
What happened last week was very regrettable and unfortunate, and
Despite popular belief, the system was not dead on arrival. The system sold about 5 million units in its first year, and for a short period of time after its 2012 release, the system was nearly impossible to find at retailers, especially the deluxe model. There were high hopes for the system as the stories of it flying off store shelves was propagated throughout the 2012 holiday season, but as soon as the season ended, it became increasingly clear that there was something wrong. The systems were sitting on store shelves. The system was being beaten in sales by the 360 and PS3, who, by that time, had been on the market for nearly the entire lifespan of a normal console generation, and the word made its way out. The system was beginning to look like a financial catastrophe. I'm not going to go too deep into why the system failed here, as I'll talk more about it as we go along, and today is about looking at the Wii U for what it did right and what it helped accomplish, but the Cliff Notes version is a terrible system reveal that confused the media as to what the system was, a name that confused consumers as to what the system was, and a terrible string of marketing errors that confused everyone as to what the hell Nintendo was doing. The system ended up selling a little over 13 million units lifetime, making it the worst selling system in Nintendo's storied history, unless you count the Virtual Boy, which many consider to be a part of their portable lineup. But nonetheless, these sales had no chance of turning around, and because of that, Nintendo, if leaks are to be believed, began R&Ding the Switch just a little over a year after the Wii U's initial launch. Nintendo moved on from the system more rapidly than any console maker has moved on in 2 generations, and made the decision shortly after announcing the Switch to put a full stop to the Wii U's production in almost all regions. But it didn't come without its benefits, and the first of which is incredibly important and slightly nuanced.
Good news for people that have credit problems. Norton Furniture is here for you. Now, seriously.
The Wii U was a massive failure from a marketing and consumer objective standpoint, but Nintendo has shown that those failures have made Nintendo a better company as a whole from this very standpoint. The Nintendo Directs began shortly before the launch of the Wii U and ran throughout the life cycle of the system. They are an eloquent and frequent way to create brand loyalty and consumer fervor over the company's releases without waiting for annual conferences like E3, and these Directs defined the Wii U era. The E3 reveal of the Wii U was a disaster, and it is because of this E3 disaster that Nintendo made the decision to reveal and market the Switch as they did. Instead of going the traditional route of a huge E3 press conference reveal that competes for mindshare with Sony and Microsoft, Nintendo controlled the message this time around and revealed the system on their terms and did the exact opposite of what they did with the Wii U. They saw the failures of confusing name branding and smartly abandoned the Wii name for a simpler and more understandable name in the Switch. They used concise marketing that didn't rely on the humor that largely missed the mark during the Wii U era, and realized that their goal of marketing to everyone that they attempted to accomplish with the U was not worth replicating. So they did the smartest thing they could. They marketed without words. They marketed their games. The Wii U was amazing because it showed the world one thing: how much people truly love Nintendo's games. That system sold 13 million units almost solely on the back of their first-party output, and may have had the greatest set of exclusives of any console of the past generation. And Nintendo took this reality, and when it came time to reveal and market the Switch, it was all about the games. They didn't hold an E3 press conference talking about Netflix this and Miiverse that. They said, here's Breath of the Wild, here's Mario Odyssey, here's Mario Kart, here's Xenoverse, and here's people playing them. That's all you need to know, that's all you need to see. And it was. But the Wii U itself was a trial run as well in quite a few ways.
I don't know, but I certainly don't intend to pay for them.
Many groaned at the idea of the Switch's online service being paid come the holiday season, or whenever it's finally made public. But we forget that the Wii U was Nintendo's first real foray into the online space, and despite some failures, it was a pretty damn good one for having no real experience in this environment. Those who were around for Nintendo's consoles pre-Wii U know that the original Wii was an utter failure in terms of online features and functionality. The Wii U saw Nintendo begin to spread their wings in this regard. Miiverse was slightly pointless, sure, but at the same time, it was an awesome feature for those who wanted to spend some time with it. It allowed for a real sense of community that we had not seen on a Nintendo console and was wholly unique compared to what was being offered by the other consoles, and it's even something that the Switch probably could have used. We finally had full support for streaming services, a functional eShop that made nearly every Wii U game available, but most importantly, we saw a system that knew what it had. We got eShop releases like Mario Galaxy, Mario 64, and a fully fleshed out virtual console that meant you could develop one of the greatest libraries of Nintendo games possible, all on one system. But maybe the most important thing that the Wii U did at the time was made all this online functionality free. Want to play Splatoon with your friends? It's free. Want to play some COD? Free. It was a refreshing breath of fresh air at the time, and now we know that it will not be making its way onto future Nintendo consoles. Yes, the online stability struggled, it wasn't perfect, and many of the first-party games suffered in turn with online problems, issues, crashing, and latency, but all of that should not overshadow the good that was found underneath. The gamepad itself was a source of a lot of confusion amongst the consumer base about what exactly the system was. Between the gamepad and the name, many believe that the gamepad itself was simply a new controller for the original Wii, or an extension of the system. Which is unfortunate because the gamepad actually did a lot right, and was essentially the testing ground for what the Switch would become in the hybrid promise. The gamepad was bulky, it felt a lot like a toy, and was made of a plastic that felt more in line with what you would find in a Happy Meal as opposed to a $300 console. But it was also revolutionary in what it offered. Being able to take your game from the TV to your gamepad and continue to play, and we are talking about huge console AAA games even in another room, was incredible, and was fulfilled in a way that was better executed than something like what the Vita offered. We take this feature for granted now, but in 2013, this was the most interesting piece of tech on the market and how forward-thinking it really was. What the gamepad was version 1.0 of the Switch, 4 or 5 years before the tech world caught up with that reality, both in terms of the tech itself and how much that tech costs. And it's not just that, but the ingenuity of games like Zombie U and how it utilized the gamepad, and how multiplayer games like Mario Party took advantage of this functionality, was unlike anything else on the market. Sure, those two games in particular weren't the greatest, but they were interesting. Hell, it made games like Nintendo Land possible, and in this way, while so many of us hate on that gamepad, without it we might not have the Switch in its current state. And without it, this hybrid future that everyone wants to talk about now would still be years away, or better yet, there wouldn't be any companies bold enough or risky enough to take their next console in this direction, one that was incredibly risky at the time and may still be today. Sure, the system could have used dual gamepad support. The range of the pad wasn't great, and I didn't love its battery life, but credit where credit is due with what Nintendo pulled off. Now this section is going to be one of the more controversial sections being discussed today, simply because there's a lot of conversation about it as we speak. When the Wii U launched to relatively tepid immediate sales, we all know what proceeded to happen, and it's a conversation, like I said, that we're still having today. We saw third parties quickly and immediately evaporate, all but abandoning Nintendo's new console, and they would literally never return. One COD game, one 2K game, one Madden, it was all the system would get. This was a huge problem for the Wii U. That cannot be understated. This lack of third-party support might have been one of, if not the biggest factors in the system's downslide. The Wii maintained a reasonable, not great, but reasonable third-party support, due simply to its massive sales success, despite it being underpowered when compared to its competition. But the Wii U, underpowered and undersold, and thus there was nothing keeping these game makers around. This is one area where you can't really defend the Wii U per se, but that doesn't mean that it was all for naught. Nintendo clearly learned from the Wii U when it came time to develop the Switch. The company has gone on record on a multitude of occasions as saying that one of the biggest things they wanted out of the Switch was for it to be easy to develop for and easy to port to, developer friendly. They went to Nvidia and got a Tegra chip that made those things possible. The Switch is, unlike the Wii U, powerful enough to continue to handle the porting of current generation games that really matter to the casual gamer. Things like 2K and even shooters like Doom and Wolfenstein 2. Having games like these, like Skyrim, is showing that for the first time in 2 generations, Nintendo has learned from the errors of the Wii U and even the Wii, and made sure to create a system that engenders the support of third parties from day one, simply based on the cost effectiveness of porting and creating for the system. And we have heard from developers across the board as to just how thankful they are for this reality. Power, graphical fidelity, it's never been Nintendo's focus. Well, at least not since the GameCube days. And with that being said, there were quite a few questions before the Wii U as to how Nintendo would translate some of their bigger franchises to the HD era. What would an HD Zelda look like, an HD Mario, and so on and so forth. What Nintendo showed with the Wii U is that the HD era did nothing if not make their games an even more aesthetically pleasing experience. But it's also another place where the Wii U's failures should actually, just maybe, be viewed as a good thing for Switch owners in this generation. Because the Wii U era ended so rapidly, and because it became obvious so quickly that Nintendo would be wise not to put too many of their eggs in one basket, it has allowed the Switch to launch alongside the first new 3D Zelda game since the Wii, the first new sandbox Mario game since, depending on how you define it, the Wii or the GameCube, and the first Xenoblade Chronicles game since the Wii as well. This is all in its first year. Even more impressive, this didn't come at the complete expense of the Wii U catalog, a wholly underrated catalog. There's so many this overseas who created a phenomenal exclusive game at the same ones that plans to Mario Kart. Introduction of the overseer was the true Yoshi's Woolly World and the true quality is a god of chaos. And that is the main reason why it is such a shame that so few people got their hands on the console. The system was chock full of phenomenal games that a very small sector of the gaming community got their hands on. This alone should keep the Wii U from going down in console history as entirely obsolete. When you have a younger sibling, they often have an easier time growing up. They catch less heat from your parents because they can ride in your shadow, learn from your mistakes, see what does and doesn't work. The Wii U was that big brother. The Wii U in its release was a striking series of missteps from a company that is the main veteran of this industry. But in every error, there seemed to be some silver lining that we can now, with 2020 hindsight, start to see. The Switch is a culmination of everything Nintendo learned last generation, a righting of a ship that long ago sunk. But the Wii U does not deserve to be forgotten. The Wii U provided a lot of joy, made a lot of great memories for a lot of kids, adults, and Nintendo fans alike over the past few years. The system was not by any means perfect, but that doesn't mean that it wasn't great in its own ways. Most of you have seen my Switch videos. You know that I am no Wii U apologist. You know that I have been very critical of the system in the past. But the other day, I finally packed my Wii U up and put it away to make more space in my tiny New York City apartment, and I felt a real mix of emotions. Wii U, our relationship was one of the worst relationships I have ever been in. You didn't give me the things I needed, you ate up a lot of my money, you broke a lot of your promises, and you weren't nearly all that you could have been. But I did love you, flaws and all, and we had a lot of great times. So goodbye, Wii U. You will be missed, but you will not be forgotten.
Well guys, that was it for today's doc, and as always, the start of a dialogue. Did you own a Wii U? What did you like about your Wii U? What did you hate about your Wii U? What do you think was the best and worst thing about the system? And most importantly, what was the best game you played on it? Or what was the game that you wish you had played on the Wii U? And finally, what Wii U game do you want to see ported to the Switch? Let me know the answer to any and all those questions down in the comments below. Let's have a real conversation. And as always, if you enjoyed this video, hit that like button. If you're not yet a member of this team, press subscribe. I put out gaming essays, examinations, and analysis like this twice a week, sometimes even more, like this week when I get the chance to. But it will still be normally twice a week. So hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any. And as always, I will link the Patreon if you want to support this channel even further in the top comment or the pinned comment. And there will be my Instagram and Twitter if you can follow me there to get more updates on what docs are coming and when they're coming. And until next time, guys, as always, thank you so much for supporting me and supporting this channel, having these conversations with me, watching these videos. Until next time, guys, I'm out.